Word to brothers and sisters, welcome back to Haiku. I do, and it's time for good hip hop music, man. Now, in today's album review, I'm checking out one of my favorite rap projects from 2021. It's actually a project by Pretty Ugly. It's called Soil, which is an abbreviation. And if you know Pretty Ugly, you know everything is an abbreviation. So the album dropped last year in July, and this month actually makes 1 year anniversary. So shout out to Priddy, man, and everyone who worked on that project. And one of my favorite rap songs in terms of production is actually a song that didn't make it into this album, strange enough. But I think I'll get into that a bit later on. So for now, let's get straight into the review. Now, kicking off the content of the album, on track number 2, a song called Let Me Out, we've got Zulu Mecca, who is a Pretty Ugly stable mate. Zulu Mecca, she's a poet, she's a lyricist, and if you're someone who's patient enough to listen to the kind of music that she makes and the way that she writes her music, then you'll know that Zulu Mecca is actually never given a bad verse. And such is true on this song as well. I feel like her style of writing fits hand in glove with this song right here, so that's definitely a dope collaboration there. And then on track number 7, called Dead Jungle, we've got Blackie. And I'm a fan of R&B Blackie instead of rap Blackie. So even when I saw his name on the song, I thought maybe he's gonna do a chorus or maybe do a hook, but he actually delivers a verse, and it's actually a solid verse. I think Blackie definitely understood the assignment on the song, so shout out to Blackie. And then on the same song, there's also a Brooklyn rapper by the name HD. He's a guy who went viral for sounding like Jay-Z, actually, but he's actually a very good storyteller, and I think he also delivered a solid verse on the song here. It's just that for some reason I'm no longer a fan of handout verses from international artists, especially now. I understand back in the days, but now it's like, I like what Earth Gang actually did with Blackie. They took one of their songs called Belly, and then they removed Future's verse, and then they put Blackie's verse on their song, and then I think they also invited him to a leg on part of their international tour, for him to feature with them there. And that's the kind of mutual respect that I want right now between international artists and local artists. I feel like it's not 2005 anymore. We don't need these hand down verses where these international artists feel like they are good enough to feature on our audience, but our artists are not good enough to feature on their projects, which I think we're so far beyond that at this point. South African artists are making music that is at the quality level, or actually on par with most international artists. And if Benny the Butcher really fucks with Stogie T, instead of giving him a verse to feature on Stogie T's song, he definitely needs to get Stogie to feature on the Griselda project, because I feel like our artists are on that level where they deserve that kind of mutual respect. So, but anyway, I'm digressing. On a track called Rap Relay, track number 8, we've got Maclera Dope Boy, Super Saiyan Tanga Broly. And if you know Maclera, he does what he does there. There's like 2 fire verses there, between him and Pretty Ugly. And for me, Rap Relay, I feel like it's about 2 or 3 verses short. Because a rap relay is supposed to be a back and forth. If you look at a song like Home and Away Games by Tyson and Tato Soul, that for me is like a proper rap relay, because they're doing the whole back and forth thing, trying to rap each other. So yeah, this rap relay, I feel like, for me it's too short. Maybe they should have given me a remix, and maybe I would have been happy with that. But yeah, that's it with the features, man. Now if you look at the storytelling, the bars, the poetry, the lyricism, the delivery on this project, it's a whole bar mitzvah. It's definitely a bar mitzvah of rhymes. I feel like it's a celebration of the art of writing. If you pick any song here on this playlist and you play it, it becomes immediately clear that the assignment here is to rap. It's all about rapping. The codables here, it's just codables for days. If money bought pain, how much hurt would you purchase? Like there's so many lines here that you could use as tattoos. We're really being honest. So yeah, I can't help but give the content of this album a 10 out of 10. Now, if you look at the production on the album, it's actually a 10, but I'm going to give it a 9. And the reason is because we've got some really, really dope producers here. I mean, we've got Shooter Coombs, we've got Zuchiko Dope, we've got Her Cut the Lights, shout out to Herc. And then we've got Wichi, Wichi 1080, who was Pretty Ugly's long-time producer, right? And these, I mean, they're very solid producers. They're able to give a soundscape to the project, which is very like taking it back to the 90s. It's very soulful, it's very jazzy, very R&B, very boom bappy. It's got that Jay Dilla and Pete Rock vibe. So it's the classic hip hop nod. When you're listening to the songs, you just wanna you wanna do that classic. So it's about going back to the basics of hip hop production, right? Which is a good thing. But if you consider the fact that they didn't feature any vocalists, on the choruses and the hooks, then can that you can actually forgive. But for them not to sample vocalists as well, for me, it's like, I mean, if we're really talking about taking it back to the basics, I need that sample of a vocalist. I mean, every classic hip hop album definitely features. I mean, I don't think I've been through every classic hip hop album, but for the ones that I've come across, you need that one classic where you're sampling some vocals from a very soulful old artist or something of that nature. I mean, one of my favorite albums by Proverb, which is the Book of Proverbs, there's a song there called My First Love, right? And when that song starts and I hear the sample of this, there's a woman who sings there. It takes the song to a whole new level. Just to have a sample of a vocalist, male or female, just to have that sample of a vocalist, for me, I feel like it really would have gone a long way. So for that reason, like I said, the production is a solid 10, because the mixing, the mastering, everything is basically top shelf. But for my own selfish reasons, I'm actually going to have to give the production of this album a very spiteful 9 out of 10. Now, if you look at the replay value of the project, you've got about 10 tracks, and 2 or 3 of them are about interlude length, and you're getting about half an hour listen worth of solid rap music, right? Now, I personally had to alter the track listing a bit, just to improve my own personal listening experience. So on my list, I actually start with the 5th track called Poltergeist Interlude. And I don't know why he called it an interlude. You should have just let it be Poltergeist. And so I made that the first track because the opening lines on that song is really ain't no rapper dope as I. And for me, I feel like it kind of sets the tone for the whole project. It's got lines there where he says, I wrote these lines so that my niggas get some quotes for life. So I feel like Poltergeist for me is the perfect intro of this album because it just really sets the whole tone of what's going to happen in this whole project. So yeah, that's my first track, and then I let everything play as it is, and then the last track, which is Por Favor, track number 10. On my playlist, I actually removed that song because I actually don't like that song. Por Favor for me, it reminds me of that Ambitious Entertainment Pretty Ugly, and I didn't quite like that Ambitious Entertainment Pretty Ugly. I feel like he was trying to do too much there. So I've removed that song, and then I've put another song which didn't actually make it to this project, a song called Rainbow by Pretty Ugly. And I think he dropped the song before this album dropped. He dropped it, I think, as a 2-pack loosely, and I don't understand why, because for me it's such a perfect fit for this album that it's actually my favorite song on this project, which it didn't make it to the project, So yeah, it's a very weird thing for me. And the production on that song, that Rainbow song, like what Shooter Coombs did there, hey man, like it reminds me of Jay-Z's 444, like I think a lot of people don't understand what's going on production wise on that song, So for me as well, that song by Pretty Ugly, man, that Rainbow track, it's definitely on track number 10 for me. So when I start to play the album, I'm just going through this whole experience of looking forward to that last song that I feel like sonically kind of embodies everything that's going on with this project. So, according to my rearranged list, the whole sequencing of the album is basically a 10. But if you consider the fact that, the fact that there's no vocals here, to carry out the choruses, I think for an average listener, the project might be a bit sonically tiring, because you need those nice vocals, for people to sing along to, because the album is very lyrical. And when it's very lyrical, you need something to help it, to help you digest it a bit, especially if you're not someone who's into like lyrical music, So for the average listener, I would assume that the replay value here is somewhere between a 4 and a 5, and yeah, for a 5 out of 10. 5 out of 10. Now for the important question, does the album have a concept? The album definitely has a concept. There's a very elaborate concept actually. Now I'm not gonna get much into the artwork, because it's a bit cryptic, and well, all I know is that the guy who designed the artwork, which is like, I think it was a painting, is one of his stable mates. It's an artist who's also signed under Stable Entertainment, and he's the one who designed the cover, right? It's a very cryptic. I don't think I actually understand what that whole image ties into the project. But the project is titled Soil, which is an abbreviation, and it stands for a lot of things. It stands for serving others inherits loyalty, serving others invites love. You can pretty much make up your own, but it's basically an abbreviation. And the thing about soil is the beginning. That's where everything comes from, right? It's basically about identity, going back to the roots, right? We are all, people of color, we are all children of the soil, right? Because everything starts from the soil. So the whole concept of the album is about, let's go back to the beginning and the basics of rapping, right? Let's go back to the production of hip hop music, the jazz, because we know that jazz gives birth to hip hop. So that's why the samples are very jazzy. The music is very soulful, because the whole idea is, let's go back to the beginning where everything comes from, right? Which is soil. Now, the second question is, does the concept, or does the music match up to the concept of the album? And it definitely does. I mean, the first single of the album, Soil, right? Priddy Ugly speaks about, African children who are within the diaspora, who are talking about wanting to come back to, the African soil, because that's where they basically comes from. So everything is about, the oppression in the struggle. Because the thing about rap music is, rap and jazz and soul music, it's struggle music, right? It's music that was born out of oppression. So, how he speaks about, how the colonizers, how the motherland is now the colonizers' playground. It all speaks to the idea that, everything, that the beginning of all people of color is in Africa. We are all children of the soil. That is the beginning. So he ties that whole concept with rapping as well, to say, how did rapping bafit? Because that's basically the beginning, right? Nowadays everyone is singing, people are auto-tuning, everything is very R&B influenced. But with this project, he's saying, let's go back to the soil, the beginning. How did rapping? So that's basically the whole concept of the song Soil. And then you've got the song Let Me Out with Zulu Mecca, which is poetry, right? That song speaks about, how do you free me from oppression? How do you free me from the ideas that other people have about me? So it's about expressing yourself, because that's what rap music is about. It's about expressing yourself and basically going against the grain, right? So you've got poetry, which is another important aspect of rap. We've got a track called Reset, which is it's an interlude, a very dope interlude. Then you've got Whoa Whoa, and I like the concept of what he did there with Whoa Whoa, because there's a duality to that song where he's basically saying, my girl is bad, but she's not a bitch. She's a bad bitch. So the duality of how he plays that, to say, yes, she is bad, but she's definitely not a bitch. She's actually a bad bitch, which means something completely different, and then he goes on to, define what, the acronym bitch actually means, because, Priddy Ugly with acronyms, that's basically his thing. So that's a dope track. There you've got Poltergeist, which is a dope freestyle. Very, very dope freestyle, freestyle is another important, element of hip hop. Loose Change. In Loose Change, he carries one rhyme scheme throughout that whole song, So it also speaks to how you basically, you can use different styles and flows, but maintain the same rhyme scheme the whole time. Important hip hop elements, Dead Jungle. Dead Jungle for me the word is a bit of an oxymoron, you know, because a jungle can't be dead. But yeah, you know, I don't know how to you know, to elaborate further on that. But I like that whole principle of going back to 3 verses on a song, right? 3 hot 16 verses on a song. Those are the principles of hip hop. Nowadays, rappers get away with just doing 1 verse on a song. Some barely even give you a verse, you know. So let's go back to the basics. 3 verses on a song. We've got Rap Relay, which is a cipher, right? The whole back and forth. And I would have liked Priddy Ugly to go in that direction in terms of the visuals, but you know, he chose something different, and you know, that is what it is. But Rap Relay is basically a hip hop cipher, which is another important element of going back to rap. And then we've got Handful of Dust, right? Handful of dust from the soil, because you know, dust comes from the soil. And Handful of Dust is basically a diss track. Diss track battles, you know, battles, another important hip hop element, you know. And then you've got Por Favor, which you know, I removed from my checklist. I don't know what the song is about, man. So yeah, but basically every song on this project ties to this whole scheme of let's go back to the beginning, to the soil. You know, let's go back to rapping, let's go back to the production of hip hop music, and what it is. And what I like about that is that we actually get that, you know, throughout every different generation. I mean, Proverb, what he did with the book of Proverb, you know, he basically did his own rendition of what it means to go back to the principles of rap, right? Many years later, we had, you know, Shane Eagle with Yellow. He did the same thing. You know, he did his own rendition of what it means to go back to the principles of rapping. And we're getting Priddy Ugly doing the same thing with this album Soil, where he's doing his own rendition of what it means to go back to the basics of hip hop. And I'd really like to see that culture continue going forward, because now we really are at a time where, you know, rappers are just singing, you know, a lot of them it's melodies, it's vibes, you know, the production, it's, you know, it's very trappy, you know, it's drill music, there's a lot. So every now and then I would appreciate to have that one person who decides to do a project that's really dedicated to the whole idea of going back to the basics. And I think that's what, you know, Priddy Ugly successfully was able to do with this project here. And yeah, man, I think that was a very long review. Very long review. But yeah, that's the end of my review. I really messed with this project, and I saw that Priddy Ugly announced that he's dropping a new EP called Mud. That's going to be coming out sometime in September, which kind of makes sense. You know, this one is soil, you know, you get rain, and then now he's got mud, right? And the last song that I included on this album called Rainbow. What happens after you get rain? For you to get mud, you get a rainbow. So I think you know, that song for me, it fits perfectly on this album. You know, conceptually, if you're speaking conceptually, remove Por Favor, just put that song I spoke about called Rainbow, and the whole thing conceptually just makes sense. But yeah, man, that's the end of the review. Remember, man, take care of your mental, and peace, love. I'm out of this.